We're back again with episode 20 of Our Baseball Journey, which is the story of my wife Carol and my visits to all 30 major league ballparks. And today, in episode 20, we're going to return to the city of Chicago and we're going to see a crosstown rivalry. The visiting Cubs will take on the home team of Chicago White Sox at U.S. Cellular Park, as it was known at that particular time. The trip that we were on had us drive to Chicago, spend some time with our kids, enjoy the game in Chicago. From there, we drove north to Milwaukee, saw the Brewers. We'll talk about that in our next episode. Then we turned around, came home, but we did so via Cleveland so that we could see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame again. It's a place that we really enjoy, and it was a probably the 10th time that we had been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, my background again, I tried to find something unique, and this particular game, there's quite a story about this banner that's behind me. And first of all, you're probably having some trouble reading the banner, but that's because we were sitting behind the family that had the banner. And so this is the way it appeared to us as we were sitting behind them. Now, it didn't obscure our view. They were very kind about that. But this banner is very significant and it foretold the future. Let me share my desktop and let me move me over here a little bit out of the way. Okay, this was in July of 2016, well in advance of the postseason for that year. And this is what the banner actually said. So I used Photoshop to reverse it and turn it around. And it said 2016, the year I beat cancer and the year the Cubs go all the way. So this young lady was forecasting what was going to happen to the Cubs. And indeed, she was right. If you look right here, you can see I captured an image of some jubilant Cubs after they won the 2016 World Series. Now, it had been a bit of a drought for the Cubs prior to then. They had won the series twice prior to 2016, but they did so in a significant way. They were the first team to win back-to-back World Series. They did so in 1907, then in 1908. It took 108 years for them to win another World Series in 2016, and they were both very happy, the Cubs, and I'm sure this young lady was very happy too. Okay, let's start by talking about some of the different bullets that are on this slide, starting with the one that says something about the hotel. We stayed in this hotel, which many of you may be familiar with. It is my personal favorite domestic hotel. It's the Hilton Towers right on Michigan Avenue. And for those of you familiar, that's the first significant street that really faces Lake Michigan. And so if you're fortunate enough to have a room on this side of the hotel, you've got a beautiful view of Lake Michigan, and the sunrise could be very, very impressive. Grant Park is between the hotel and the shoreline for Lake Michigan. And Grant Park is where events like Lollapalooza or other types of activities tend to be. This hotel has also been used in selected movies, and one that you might be familiar with is the Fugitive movie with Harrison Ford in the lead role. This image right here is from part of that movie that was filmed inside my favorite hotel. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is protective netting. If you take a look at this image that I took from my seat, you'll see that there's protective netting between me and that particular set of players. And what's good about the protective netting, of course, is the protection. What's not so good about the protective netting is in the event you're using a camera and relying on autofocus, that autofocus mechanism can easily get confused between trying to focus on the netting and the players. And so it's a bit of a return to the past, where as a photographer, you've got to switch back to manually focusing to make sure you get nice, crisp photos. Okay, I think I've mentioned that this was a visit that took us to Chicago to visit with our daughter and her husband who live in Chicago. And it was a crosstown rivalry. It was very well attended. I'm pretty sure they had about 40,000 fans at that particular game. So it was a well attended game as well. This area over on the lower right portion is a link to the box score. And you can see here coming into the game, the Cubs had the much better record, but that really didn't help them in this game. If you click on that area, you'll go to a detailed box score for the game that you can see ended with a 5-4 Sox victory. Our last episode had us in San Francisco, where the visiting Cubs at that time were playing the home Giants. And who pitched for the Cubs? Well, this fellow right here, Jake Arrieta. And Jake Arrieta pitched for the Cubs in this game that we saw in July of 2016. Now, a couple of pictures about the game. I've already mentioned that there was a Cubs convention on the mound right here. Interesting shot of a Cubs batter here. We got to the park early, so we had a chance to walk around, get acclimated, enjoy much of what was outside and around the park. It was a night game, so you can see that once it got dark, um, the scoreboard, which is right here, did magical things when the White Sox hit a home run. And so it's a very attractive display. This, before it got dark, is just a tribute. The park that we were in, U.S. Cellular Field, was 25 years old during 2016, and that's what this is commemorating on this particular image. Now, let me talk just a little bit more about the game. The game was an exciting one. There was 20 total hits, and the Cubs had 12 of those 20 hits. So from that perspective, you would say you might have expected them to win. Well, the Cubs indeed tied up the score at 4-4 in the top of the ninth inning, but in the bottom of the ninth inning, the White Sox broke the tie, won the game, yielding this fireworks over on the far left. And so it was an interesting victory for the poor performing Chicago White Sox. But back to the end of the season, the result at the end of the season was the Cubs winning the World Series. I will skip down just to one of the bullets right here, I have an image of the station for the White Sox. You can see the park off in the distance here. The point was there was a tremendous number of those 40,000 fans that relied on public transportation to get them out of the neck of the woods that US Cellular Field was in. And I was really impressed with how efficient that subway processing was handling the load of everybody trying to get out of town at one time. I forgot to mention my kielbasa. Here I am with my daughter, and she's asking the photographer to hold on a minute, but I don't think it worked in this case. And so we were both enjoying at that time a kielbasa. So is there anything else about the game that I want to say here based upon the slide? I don't think so. I think I've covered virtually everything about the game. And so moving on, we did several interesting things in Chicago. There is, of course, the elevated train, and you can see a picture from above as well as from below the L, as it's called, right here. We also made a return visit to the Art Institute, and this is a view of the facade of the Art Institute. This is from inside, same thing right here, these two shots right here. We did a lot of walking around the city of Chicago. You can see some of the skyline here. This is a nice daylight shot of the skyline. And this particular building, at one point, the Sears Tower, was the tallest building, I think, in the world. And not on this visit, but on a subsequent visit, and after the Sears Tower became known as the Willis Tower, they built something on one of the top floors. So it's on the 100th or so floor. They have these sky decks, which are basically bubbles that hang outside one of the upper floors on the Willis slash Sears Tower. And like I said, we didn't check out this attraction during this visit. We have during a subsequent visit to Chicago, and you get some terrific photographs provided the weather is not overcast and rainy, which it was when we actually took the subsequent trip and went out into the sky deck and had a chance to enjoy that. Okay, I guess wrapping this up, the only other thing I might want to mention is we have here an image of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And like I said, we've now been there in excess of a dozen times. And one of the things I will point out is they are actually making an extension. They're building onto the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so we're going to have to go back so that we can enjoy yet more of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the new architecture that they will put in. So let me stop sharing and let me again just call attention to the fact that tremendous forecast by the young lady with the banner that you see behind me. And I'll be back to talk about the game from Milwaukee in episode 21. And I'll conclude with a thank you for your attention.